All right, everyone. We spend so much of our time in the therapy room talking about our clients' thoughts, right? We're trained to listen for those automatic negative thoughts. But what if I told you there's another layer, something incredibly powerful but so often missed? Today, we're diving into the mind's eye, those mental images that can drive so much of a person's distress. Think of this as a masterclass in making the invisible visible.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to really nail down what this mind's eye problem is. Then, we'll get into the good stuff, the practical skills. How do you actually identify these images, and what do you do once you find one? We'll cover responding to images that just pop up, and then we'll get into a more advanced tool, actually inducing imagery on purpose. And of course, we'll wrap up with the key takeaways you can start using with your clients tomorrow.
I want you to think about something for a second, something that might just change how you run your next session. What if those automatic thoughts were all so good at hunting down? What if they're only half the story? What if the thing that's really driving your client's anxiety, their sadness, what if it isn't words at all?
That's right. They're images. We're talking about these mental pictures that can flash through a person's mind in a split second. They can be super distressing, and you know what? Clients are experts at pushing them away so fast they barely even notice them. And here's the kicker. If we don't know to ask about them, they just stay there, under the surface, causing all sorts of problems.
So there's a clinical term for this, of course, an imaginal automatic thought. Basically, it's a mental picture that shows up right alongside a verbal thought. So you have a client who says, I feel like I'm imposing. But it's not just that thought floating in their head. At the exact same time, they might be seeing a vivid image of their classmate giving them an irritated look. And that's the key, isn't it? If we only work with the words I'm imposing, and we miss that powerful image of rejection, we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so if these images are so important, how in the world do we get at them? How do we access that internal world? Well, that's what we're going to tackle first. It's all about making that invisible world visible.
You know, sometimes the simplest way in is the best. It's often just about asking directly. Let's imagine a client. We'll call her Sally. She says something like, I just don't think I can handle a part-time job. Now, our instinct is to dive into that thought, right? But instead, what if you just paused and asked, I wonder, when you had that thought, did you get a picture in your head? It's such a simple question, but it's a powerful invitation to go deeper than the words.
And listen to what Sally says. She doesn't just say, yep, no. She describes a whole scene. She says, I guess I pictured myself walking back to my dorm late at night, just feeling overwhelmed and kind of burdened. You hear that? It's not an abstract concept. It's a specific moment, late at night, feeling the weight of it all. That's the gold we're looking for. She's not just thinking she's burdened, she's seeing it.
Here's a quick pro tip for you. Sometimes you'll ask, did you get an image? And your client will just give you a blank stare. The word image just doesn't connect for everyone. So it's super helpful to have a few other words in your back pocket. Try asking, did a mental picture pop into your head? Or were you kind of daydreaming for a second? Or what were you imagining? You'd be surprised how often just changing the word unlocks everything.
Okay, here's a little bit more of an advanced clinical pearl, but it's a game changer. Pay attention to what's happening in your own mind during the session. Seriously, if your client is talking and suddenly you get a picture in your head, that can be an incredible cue. You can gently offer it up, something like, as you were talking just now, I got this picture of your roommate scowling. I'm just curious, was anything like that popping into your head? It's amazing how often your own imagery can tune you into theirs.
All right, so let's say you've done it. You asked the question, and your client has described a really distressing image. Now what? What do you actually do with it? This brings us to the real heart of our session today, the therapist's toolkit. Let's look at the interventions.
The first technique, and honestly one of the most powerful, is called following the image to completion. Here's the core idea. Our clients hit pause on their mental movies at the absolute worst possible moment. They freeze the frame on the moment of peak fear or total despair. Our job is to be the director who says, okay, let's hit play. What happens next?
Let's go back to Sally and her exam anxiety. Her image is, she's in the exam, her mind goes blank, and she's paralyzed. Boom, freeze frame. So we gently ask, okay, you're paralyzed. Then what happens? And of course, the realistic answer isn't that she stays frozen for 3 hours. No. She says, well, I'd probably skip to a question I know and just start writing. See? Coping begins, and we follow it all the way to the end. I hand in the paper and go to my next class. The shift in emotion is huge. She goes from feeling really, really anxious to shaky, but much better. That's progress.
All right, technique number 2 is all about empowerment.
I love this one. It's called the movie director method. We teach our clients that they are not just helpless spectators watching a horror movie in their head. No way. They have the director's chair. They can yell cut and change the scene entirely.
So check this out. A client has this terrifying image of his professor, who looks huge, is scowling, stomping his foot. Just really intimidating. The anxiety is through the roof. So, using the movie director method, the client does something kind of magical. He imagines the professor shrinking down, getting smaller and smaller until he's a 3-year-old having a full-blown tantrum on the floor. And just like that, poof, the threat is gone. The anxiety drops. And suddenly, making an appointment with this professor doesn't seem so impossible.
Now, this next technique, coping in the image, is a little different but really useful. Instead of changing the scene or fast-forwarding to the end, we actually have the client stay in the difficult image, but we guide them to imagine themselves coping successfully within it. It's like a mental dress rehearsal for handling a tough situation. It builds confidence and self-efficacy like you wouldn't believe. And look, these are just a few of the tools you can have in your kit. There are others. You can help a client jump ahead in time, past the worst part. You can reality test the image, asking, how likely is that really? You can even have them repeat the image over and over until it loses its power. Or swap it out for a totally different, more positive image. The point is to be flexible and have a lot of options. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Everything we've talked about so far has been about responding to those spontaneous images that pop up. Now we're going to get into something more advanced, how to proactively use imagery, to actually induce it, to build hope and resilience from the ground up.
One of the best ways to do this is a technique called distancing. This is perfect for clients who are stuck in that hopeless feeling. You know, the ones who truly believe that their current misery is going to last forever. What we do is we use guided imagery to help them get some distance, to see that their problems are actually time-limited, by helping them imagine a very different, more positive future.
Let's think about Sally again. She feels completely stuck, hopeless. So we ask her to travel forward in time just 1 year. And we get really specific. What do you see? Where are you waking up? And she starts to build this image. She's in an off-campus apartment with friends. She's walking to smaller classes where she actually feels comfortable. She can even imagine herself participating more. This isn't just a feel-good fantasy. It's creating a powerful, believable alternative to that feeling that nothing will ever change.
And this distancing technique can work for the most catastrophic fears you can imagine. There's this incredible case of a client, Marci, who had this paralyzing fear of dying in a car crash. And her core fear was that her daughters would be devastated forever. So the therapist had her jump forward in time. What do things look like in 6 months, in 2 years, in 10 years? And by guiding her to imagine, in detail, her daughters growing up, going to college, getting married, she was able to see that their initial devastation would subside, that they would be okay. And this significantly reduced her fear.
Wow, we have covered a ton of ground, haven't we? So how do we pull this all together into something you can actually use in your practice next week? Let's boil it all down to the key clinical takeaways.
Think of this as your clinical checklist. Number 1, always probe for images, not just thoughts. Make it a habit. 2, normalize it. Let your clients know it's totally normal to have weird or scary pictures pop into their heads. It reduces so much shame. 3, help them press play. Guide them beyond that worst possible moment freeze frame. 4, empower them. Hand them the director's megaphone and teach them that they can change the scene. And finally, number 5, use imagery to practice coping. It's like a cognitive behavioral flight simulator.
And I want to leave you with one last really important thought. None of this is magic. Just like any other clinical skill, it takes practice. I mean, try these techniques on yourself. Get comfortable with them. Use them with your clients. The more you do it, the more natural it will become, and the more powerful a tool it will be in your work. So, I'll leave you with a question to carry with you into your work this week. As you think about your clients, who comes to mind? Who is that client who just seems stuck and you can't quite figure out why? Could it be that what's holding them back isn't a thought you can argue with, but a powerful, distressing image that neither of you has seen yet? Go find out.